See if you can see my name. I can't find my name.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome. I am not the Laila Haas, but no.
Are you a tourist or?
No, but I'm very excited to be here with you. Laila is with her son and with her husband and members of her family at Walt Disney.
Wow. She sent you.
And to take your 4-year-old son to indulge his passion for Star Wars is a mitzvah. So we are going to talk about Laila behind her back. If anybody has anything derogatory or nasty to say about her, I don't want to hear it. But if anybody has anything complimentary to say about her, on that I'm always ready. Yeah. That was easy. Fantastic. Okay. So I'm just going to say, we started Lunch and Learn at Temple Bethel many years ago, and the quality of the lunch that people eat during Lunch and Learn has fallen off terribly. First of all, the number of people who come to Lunch and Learn without lunch at all is terribly disappointing. Steve is at least eating lunch. I can see, right? You have lunch in front of you, right? Steve at home? Steve, no? You're not eating?
I have lunch.
You're on mute, Steve.
Not yet.
Not eating? No? What will you be eating?
I think we have some leftover pasta and eggplant parmesan.
Eggplant parmesan is a good lunch. All right, you get points for creativity, cholesterol, and carbohydrates. All right, so what do you have for lunch there?
Not yet.
Nothing. Maddie, what are you eating there?
Turkey salad.
All right, there's bread, so that does help, but I don't know.
Tomato.
I think the eggplant parm may be winning. Patty, you got anything there?
I'm like yogurt and some blueberries.
Yogurt and blueberries doesn't win. Martha, you got anything?
Apple, trees, and almonds.
Yeah, that's not winning either. Judith is eating Famous Amos for lunch. So far, I don't know if Famous Amos beats eggplant parm though. No, all right, Carol, you have anything for lunch there? You're looking for potato chips, isn't good. What do you have?
Everybody. I have a salad, no dressing, lettuce, and different kinds of peppers.
That is a beautiful salad. It is an absolutely beautiful salad. Salads generally don't win anything, but that's good. And you. This is pathetic.
I ate lunch before I came.
You ate lunch before. What did you have?
Strudel.
Strudel.
All day. Yogurt, protein.
Well, the yogurt knocks it back down, but strudel is pretty good. And you got nothing there? No, Lauren, anything? Alan, what do you got? Turkey's not gonna beat her.
He's got chips.
What do you guys have?
No.
Nothing? All right, Steve, you win with the eggplant.
He hasn't gotten it yet.
Okay, friends, a couple of pieces of good and welfare. First, I strongly encourage everyone, we have a phenomenal opportunity this week to spend time in practice and worshiping and singing with a phenomenal musician and spiritual leader, Deborah Sachs-Mintz. Deborah is a spiritual leader and a composer and a phenomenal musician and singer. And we're going to have a phenomenal week with her. Thursday evening, she will be here at 7 p.m. for an evening of chant, where we'll have a chance to gather together and sing together and chant together. Doesn't matter if you know how to sing, doesn't matter even if you like to sing, just to be, it's like a sound bath. It is such an incredible spiritual experience. How many of you have ever done chant? All right, well, don't give that look. I'm telling you, this is gonna be such a special evening. You really, really don't wanna miss this. And then on Saturday, she's going to be leading, Shabbat morning worship and Torah study, which will be fused together, so there will not be regular Torah study for those who are regulars on Saturday morning at 9:30. She will be starting at 9:30, but it will be worship and conversation and learning kind of all rolled into one. So that's Saturday morning. It's gonna be very special. And then on Sunday at 3 p.m., she will be joined by Chava Morel and Ilana Arian, two of whom have been at Temple Bethel before. You may remember Chava Morel was with us a couple years ago for Slichot, and Ilana Arian has been a part of several different musical groups. The three of them together are like, oh my God, good. How many of you already got tickets? The rest of you, whatever plans you have, break them. Or invite your friends to come with you. It's gonna be such a phenomenal concert. I am so, one of them would be phenomenal, two of them together would be great, the three of them together is gonna be, oh my God, good. I would not blow smoke if I really didn't think that this was really gonna be as good as I'm telling you. So please, 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 you still can sign up online on the website, or you can call and we'll sell you a ticket, but the website is easier. I want to introduce you to Hope. Hope is new part of our communications team, so we're very excited to have her. Who's just joined the Temple staff in the last 10 days or so. She keeps coming back, which is fantastic. And we're very excited to have her. And of course, at the end of this month, Rabbi Naomi Levy, whom we've been studying, is going to be with us as our scholar for the weekend. And you really want to make plans to be here Friday night and Saturday to have a chance to worship and to learn with her. It's going to be really, really, very, very special. Today's class is going to focus, yes, sir.
Do we have to register for Thursday night?
It's better to, but you don't have.
I couldn't find the link in the email.
Go online under events and you should see the registration there.
I'll register.
Oh, there's registration for that, right? It's gonna be outside in the courtyard. It's gonna be really lovely under the tent there. So if it is chilly on Thursday, I haven't seen the forecast, you might wanna bring a fleece.
It's on my calendar, I just have to be able to find where to register.
So today we're gonna be looking a little bit, at, Rabbi Levy's book, Hope Will Find You. And we're gonna have a chance to talk a little bit about the concept of hope and, what hope is, and what does it mean to cultivate hope? What does it mean to wrestle with hope? Not this hope, whom we hope will stay, but different hope. Okay, so what I'd like for you to do is to please, for yourself, okay, if you have a piece of paper and a pen, you can jot down some thoughts. If not, you can remember them. I wasn't able, I'm sorry, to bring some extra paper and pen, but if you have paper and pen, great. If you have a phone, you can jot down some things in the phone. On your, or you can try to memorize things if your memory hasn't failed you. And I would like for you to respond to the following two prompts. And again, this is just for you, so don't look on the person's paper next to you. The first is to answer the prompt, hope is. And I want for you to think a little bit about how you would build that sentence. And then the second is, if hope were speaking to you, not again, hope here, but if hope were speaking to you as a gentle guide, which is such a beautiful image, what would it encourage you to do or believe right now to help you move forward? In whatever way moving forward is for you. So the first prompt, hope is. And second, if hope were speaking to you as a gentle guide, what would encourage you to do or believe right now to move forward? Take a couple minutes just to gather ourselves and get into a space to consider those prompts. Okay. So just holding those thoughts there. Wherever we are in our life's journey, there are times when moving forward seems to be an inviting prospect. Can anyone think of a time in their life where they were eager and excited about moving forward?
Graduating high school.
When you graduated high school? Someone else?
Yeah, that's it. The two husbands I had, I was very hopeful.
Okay, when you were getting married? Mm-hmm.
When I had a child.
Birth of a child. What do those moments have in common?
It's not like that. It's
Their beginnings,
the future.
they're looking forward to the future,
They're hallmarks.
they're threshold moments, right? Transitional moments.
There's a lot of uncertainty.
There's uncertainty, and at the same time, there's also,
It depends somewhat on other people. You know, it's like you're hoping what they will do, what they will be like, not high school so much, but you know.
there's potential partnerships or existing partnerships.
Or, you know, it's not in one's own control, you know.
Yeah, there's a world of possibility that's out there,
There's a world of possibility and people can disappoint us.
right? So thinking about those moments where it felt like moving forward was exciting, or we were feeling propelled, right? It's moments of wholeness. Hey, I finished that, right? I graduated. I got married. The child was born. The job was secured, whatever it was, right? That propelled, right? There's. Now I want you to think about moments where you felt stuck, or where the prospect of moving forward was daunting or seemingly impossible, or agonizing to consider. Yeah,
I think you're hitting it right on. I think that hope is a psychological mechanism to me that keeps one or helps one achieve or go on the path that they want.
okay,
Whether it's positive or negative, but it keeps
it's a
you going.
tool, it's a tool. We're gonna get to that, yes.
I think moving forward with positivity when you're older sometimes can be difficult.
How
Because
so?
you're dealing with illness and obstacles that make your life less easy to do the things that you want to do. So I think that moving forward when you're older has its challenges, which you can overcome, but
And
there's
not
more
always
challenges.
when you're older. Okay, so I was sitting on the confirmation retreat this weekend with a bunch of 16-year-olds. And one of those young women has a diagnosis of a chronic illness that from her research has told her is never gonna get better. And she lives with a lot of pain. And she says, well, shit, I'm 16 and this is it? Like, I'm always gonna be in pain, I'm always gonna have these issues, and so it can be when you get older, because those things tend to build over time when the and the ow and the right? But that doesn't just have to be. And of course, in old age, right, at whatever age, how many of you know someone who is of advanced age and is not saddled with those kinds of obstacles? Yeah,
Not in this
When my cousin died, I didn't
I didn't know how I was going to go forward without him.
Okay, so when your husband died, there was a, oh God, how do I, the prospect of a new reality was terrifying.
And I called you in tears.
Someone else?
Yeah, but even like when I moved to the States, I was stuck
I
because
can't hear you.
when I moved to the United States, you know, I was 25 years old, I had a 2-year-old, my husband used to travel 100% of the time. I had no family, no help, and I was stuck. It's like, where do I go? But I remember my dad's word that you have to stay home, cry, or make it. So I decided to make it.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
I think of all the obstacles that we all have, and there must have been all this little bit of hope that got me to go one step more, one step forward with whatever was going on. There had to be that little bit of hope, because that hope made me take the steps I needed to take.
yeah. So when we think about those moments where we feel like moving forward is easy, the future is filled with light, filled with possibility, filled with partnerships and love and opportunity and light. And then there are moments when the darkness descends and we don't know that there could ever be light again. And hope, in some ways, is like how you shine a light into that darkness that says, yeah, I know it's dark, but we're gonna move forward. And so in Naomi Levy's own life, she had a life that was brimming with potential. She was a very talented and successful young rabbi doing all kinds of cool and creative things, building a remarkable career, had a wonderful partner, and had a beautiful family. And then she gets told that her daughter Noah has what they considered to be at the time a usually fatal degenerative disease. And all of the sudden, this future that's filled with light, darkness descends, right? And how many of you have purchased this book? Okay, so if you have the chance to read through it, she very poignantly takes you on her journey from despair to hope, and how she was able to nurture hope in order to be able to move through this with her daughter, who remarkably is doing well. Hers is not the only book about hope. There was a wonderful book by Ross Douthat that was published a number of years ago. Some of you may know that name. He's a conservative columnist for the New York Times, who had an extraordinarily difficult journey through Lyme disease. And he writes brilliantly and painfully about how he was able to move through that journey as a young husband, father. Again, the same kind of experience, right? Where his future was filled with light. He was a successful columnist with the greatest newspaper in the world, and he was building this beautiful career. And he and his wife had always had this dream of raising their kids on a farm, you know, in rural America, where they would be free to run around. And they found this old farmhouse in Connecticut, and they said, this place is great, and there's a barn, and there's fields and land, and we should buy this place and fix it up, and we'll live here. And he noticed that he had this nodule on his neck, and it was painful, but it went away. And they're like, oh, you got like a tick or a bite or this or that or whatever it was. And then he ended up with symptoms that were like, wow, right? That caused him ridiculous amounts of pain and horrible suffering. And no one could figure it out for months and months. And then it was finally diagnosed as Lyme disease. That wasn't the end of the journey, because Lyme disease is not something for which there are necessarily easy therapies. And he went through all kinds of different things to try to figure out ways of navigating this illness, which is a chronic illness, and to get well. He too writes a lot about hope, and how hope was this engine this way of shining light into the darkness that had descended on him. Yes,
Say his name again.
Ross, R-O-S-S, Douthat, D-O-U-T-H-A-T. I'll give you the name of the book, I'm gonna cite it in a moment. So Naomi Levy in her book shares her journey. Some of her journey is the way that she is, which is poignant and funny, and some of it is honest and raw about how she had to learn hope as a tool to not wait for life to happen to her, but to find a way to take power over her life's journey. She writes in her book, who isn't longing for something? Who hasn't suffered? Who hasn't gotten stuck or confused or lost? Who hasn't taken a wrong turn? Who isn't frightened? And it's that yearning, that longing for something beyond the darkness that is ultimately, for her, the engine of hope that will propel her forward in the book. They're not the only ones to write about hope. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks wrote that to be a Jew is to be an agent of hope in a world seriously threatened, seriously and serially threatened by despair. Every ritual, every mitzvah, every syllable of the Jewish story, every element of Jewish law is a protest against escapism, resignation, or the blind acceptance of fate. Judaism is a sustained struggle, the greatest ever known, against the world that is in the name of the world that could be, should be, but is not yet. Judaism is the religion in Israel, the home of hope. Right? And we'll talk about that in a moment, right? But there's a great midrash about when anybody know the name of Aaron, Miriam, and Moses' mother? Isn't it sad? We know Jesus' mother, right? But we don't know Moses' mother. Moses' mother's name is Yocheved. Okay, her husband's name is Amram. Okay, of the Levite tribe. And so the Midrash teaches that when Pharaoh issued his decree that all of the male children on the day of their birth should be cast into the Nile River, there was this overwhelming sense of despair. And the story in the Midrash is that Amram divorced Yocheved because he couldn't bear to bring another child into the world. Because God forbid they should bring a child into the world and the child should have to suffer such a tragic fate on the day of its birth. At which point all of the other husbands among the Israelites divorced their wives. And the Midrash says Miriam went to her father and said, shame on you. If you do as you do, then the future that Pharaoh has painted is a certainty. But if you have hope, maybe the future that he predicted is not a certainty. At which point Amram went back to Yocheved and all the other Jewish men went back to their wives and Moses was born. And the Midrash paints this idea of just bringing a child into the world is in and of itself an act of hope and a protest against despair. There was the moil that did Ari's bris used to have a prayer or a saying that he would say at the bris, and he would say, may blessings descend on this mother who has prayed the prayer of tomorrow by bringing a new life into the world. And you think about that, right? There were children born in concentration camps, children born in deep heat camps, marriages that were consummated in the forests among the partisans. If there was ever a time when there would ever be you're going to really bring a kid into the world? And yet people did. And they were able to say, the future that is today is not necessarily the present that is today is not necessarily the future there will be tomorrow. And Rabbi Sachs says this isn't just the way in which a person can choose to be in the world. This is how our people is taught to be in the world.
Rabbi, I think hope's a form of prayer.
I think you're right, right? So, David Arno, in his book, Choosing Hope, writes, like God in whose image we are created, we are not defined by the past or the present. Together with God, we inhabit an open future, the place where hope resides. Anybody know what God's name is? When Moses says, so I get to Egypt and they say, what's your name? What am I supposed to say? I am, right, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I am what I am. But of course, Ehyeh is the future tense. I am what I will be. I will be what I am. I will be what I will be. When God offers a name for Moses to share with the Israelites, when Moses says, who should I say sent me? God said, say Ehyeh sent me. I will be. The future sent me. Because imagine you're an Israelite in slavery, right? The one thing that you know as a slave is that tomorrow is going to be exactly the same as yesterday. And the day after tomorrow is going to be exactly as it was 2 days before. There is no tomorrow for a slave. There is no future, right? But what Moses comes and says is, no, there is a future. It's out there. We just have to go chase it. Imagine how that message must have fallen on a group of people who had been slaves for centuries. Every single one of the Israelites that Moses is speaking to, including his own parents, were born into slavery, expected to live their lives as slaves, and expected to die as slaves, and expected the same for their children. Rebecca Solnit writes, hope locates itself in the premise that we don't know what will happen, and that in the spaciousness of uncertainty, there is room to act. The difference is, like the slaves said, oh, we know what tomorrow is going to be today, right? My job today was building bricks and building palaces for Pharaoh, and that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. It's not about uncertainty, right? When I graduate high school and I'm going to head off to college, I have no idea what's going to happen. When I get married, I have no idea what my life is going to be like. When I start a career, I remember we're interviewing some assistant rabbi candidates, and I'm remembering back to my first day at Temple Bethel, and I remember it was July 1st, 1996, and I drove over here. I had no idea what I was going to do all day. I knew I was going to sign my W-4 and my I-9. I was going to unpack some books on my shelf. I didn't know what I was going to do all day. And later that day, Merle said, call this family, the Reiners. They had a loss, and you're going to do the funeral for them on Wednesday. And I'm like, how do you do a funeral? Right? And so it goes, right? So it's interesting, right? Uncertainty is where hope lives, right? When you recognize uncertainty, you recognize that you may be able to influence the outcome, which they say is the difference between optimism, pessimism, and hope. What's optimism?
You're gonna have a better future.
Positive.
It's going to be great, I know for sure. What's pessimism? It's going to suck, I know for sure. What's hope?
It could be great.
I could make it great. It could be great, right?
You know what I'm hearing while you're speaking is that there is a peace treaty today that the Hamas has agreed to.
Maybe we'll get to take off these necklaces,
Maybe.
right? Right? But, right, the people who have been sitting in the streets of Tel Aviv and who have been screaming outside the president's residence every single Saturday night since October 7th to get those hostages home were being anchored and driven by hope. That maybe, and if you hear, right, with those of you who come to Friday night services, right? For over 450 days, we have said, let there never know another Shabbat in captivity. Because every Friday night when I say that, I'm like, maybe they'll be home for next Shabbat. Maybe they won't spend another Shabbat wherever God help them, they've been forced to reside. Maybe they'll have lived. Rabbi, 1 second and then we'll get to you. Rabbi Sachs wrote that optimism is the belief that things are going to get better. Hope is the belief we can make things better. Optimism is a passive virtue. Hope is an active one. It takes no courage to be an optimist, but it does need courage to hope. So, give us your thought, Anita, and then I want to pose a question.
Hope is the belief that, it's a belief that we're engaging in the future, that we can do something. I think it's different from any other. It's different from prayer, because prayer is in a way asking for someone, asking for God, let's say, or whatever we believe in, to assist us. Hope requires us to move forward. I don't know if those people who sit in this square and do their chanting, well, okay, they believe that someone will hear their chanting and they'll have an effect. But I think that hope itself requires us to be engaged.
Right, I think, as you say, Anita, and that was gonna be my question, which is, but you sort of answered the question intuitively.
I'm sorry.
No, you did it right. I was gonna ask what the difference is between optimism and hope. What were you gonna say about it?
Well, I'm wondering about the hostages themselves and the act of hope. There's nothing they can do except have belief that things will turn out okay and that they will be rescued, but there's nothing they can physically do to move themselves out of that position, I don't think, except.
They may not be
hold
able to liberate themselves,
To have
but
faith.
would it mean, using Bobby's, thought, what could a hostage or a slave do to exercise hope? Given their,
faith.
so faith, right, which leans into optimism, yeah?
They can remember their history.
Mhm.
They can remember their history. They cannot surrender their humanity. They can do everything necessary to stay strong and survive. They can believe in a different future, right? Notice that the valence of it's someone else is gonna make it okay versus I need to have whatever agency I can muster to try to impact my future. So even if someone is diagnosed with stage 4 awful, right? They can choose who they want to be in those moments. They can choose how they want to live through that illness, even if the portent for cure may be dim, because they're holding on to their agency. This idea that I get to be in the driver's seat, not the illness, not the constriction, not the political situation. Yeah.
Where does the trust and faith in God come in? Because I think that's, there's something outside of myself. While I am powerless, whether it's a
We're gonna get there. I
Okay.
wanna show you some of the things that Naomi, because she actually addresses that very clearly in her book about what that means. But just of course, the last thing, does anybody recognize this poem? This is Israel's national anthem. Hatikva, which means the hope. As long as within our hearts the Jewish soul sings, as long as forward, Kadima, to the east, to Zion looks the eye, writing this in Europe, our hope is not yet lost. So long as we lift our eyes, so long as our whole, exactly as you said, Spencer, as long as we continue to sing the song of our people, the hope is not lost. And what is that hope? The hope that is 2,000 years old, to be a free people in the land of Zion and Jerusalem. So Naomi writes the following: bad things happen to us. Disappointments, hurts, and they leave their imprint on our souls. Sometimes that imprint, that scar from our hurt, stunts our growth, prevents us from moving forward. Karen Kadar talks about the third grade wound. You remember when Karen Kadar was here a couple of years ago, Rabbi Karen Kadar, when she did our Omer, she talks about that third grade brokenness in our soul that we carry to this day. That piece of wound or shame or injury, whatever it was, right? Someone betrayed us, and so we have trouble trusting. Someone we loved died, and so we have trouble believing. Someone was cruel to us, and we have trouble loving. She writes, there's a mystical teaching. Just as the hurts from our past leave an imprint on our souls, all the joys from our future leave an imprint on our souls too. Think about that. Just as the hurts from our past leave their mark on our souls, so too do the rabbis teach that the joys that will come in your future also leave an imprint there too. The joys you have not yet experienced. The joys that you have not yet lived. Commentary said with perfect confidence that there is an imprint on our souls already from all the abundant good. Was the imprint of future blessings already sealed on my soul? And is that there for us to explore and discover if it's there? How many of you ever watched that great movie with Matt Damon, The Martian?
Oh,
Right?
it was great.
Right, where he gets stranded on Mars,
Yeah.
right? And how does he get off Mars, if you remember?
Drives forever to get to another
Right, because they had already set the rocket for the next mission. That was there already, he just had to get over there, right? And what she's suggesting is the necessary tools for you to rekindle hope are already imprinted on your soul. They're there. It's like you just have to discover it. And so she writes, in the realm of the spirit, past and future converge. Time collapses. Tomorrow's successes and celebrations have already left the mark on our souls. When all we can see are our past scars, we walk around in the present feeling hesitant, frightened, damaged, and deficient. But if we could only see the healing blessings of our future, if we could only sense all the good that awaits us, we might be more willing to take risks. We might be more open to exploring new opportunities. We might have more faith and confidence. We might have more hope. So when you think about this mystical teaching that she's lifting up here, does that seem Pollyannish a little bit?
No, it's absolutely, it resonates.
How does it resonate?
25 years ago, my law firm exploded. Exploded.
What does that mean?
And that means it died. Not because we wanted it to. I was given an opportunity to come down here. Who knew what it would turn into for 23 years? That's why this resonates.
Right, think about all of those people trudging day in, day out through the snow in Auschwitz. If anyone's ever read Viktor Frankl's masterpiece, The Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about how the difference between someone who survived and someone who didn't often was attached to hope. Hope that I know probably she's gone, but maybe she's still alive. Hope that perhaps my children survived even though I don't have any evidence. Hope that I'm gonna make it to tomorrow. He tells this remarkable story where there was a man that kind of got it in his head that the camp was going to get liberated on March the 30th. He just had it in his head. And they had some reason to think so. They could see the worried faces of the guards and they could hear the front coming from the east. And he was kind of walking with almost like a spring in his step, despite the fact that they were all terribly malnourished and exhausted and diseased. And he says, I'm telling you guys, it's going to be March the 30th. I'm telling you, it's going to be March the 30th. Then it became fairly clear that it wasn't going to be March the 30th. And on March the 29th, he went into the infirmary. On March the 30th, he slipped into a coma. And on March the 31st, he was dead. The camp was liberated April 9th. So long as he had that hope, he had agency. It gave him that strength to be able to do what he didn't think, because there was a tomorrow that he could reach for. When the darkness overcame him and despair won, he couldn't see what would happen, right? Viktor Frankl, of course, survived the war and rebuilt his family and published his book, created an entire school of psychological thought called logotherapy, which talks about how having meaning is part of the building block of mental health, and lived a whole life. She also writes, when the heart is closed, nothing can get in. The Shema tells us, this goes to faith, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And then it says, place the words I command you today on your heart. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev once asked, well, that's silly. Why do we put the words Alevavecha? Shouldn't we put them Bilevavecha, right? Shouldn't we put them in our hearts? And he said, sometimes the heart is closed and it can't take the words in. So our job is to simply put the words on the heart. And when the heart is ready, it will open and the words will seep in like water on parched land. And she said, yes, I understood this intellectually, but I wondered, when would my heart be ready to receive the words of hope that we're sitting on? Has anyone ever been in Al-Anon or AA or recovery groups? There's lots of adages that you hear in the rooms of recovery. One of them is fake it till you make it. What do you think that means? Fake it till you make it. Yeah.
From experience, not from those groups, but from using that word or that term. Just pretend you're able to do it until you're able to do it, more or less. And it works. From experience, it works.
Go
I
ahead.
agree with them. When you're in a situation where you're completely lost, I've been in that kind of situation a number of times in my life. I always say to myself, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
You go through the motions, even if you don't believe it. You say prayers of gratitude, even if there's no gratitude in your heart. You say prayers of thanksgiving, even if you're, right? You ask for awe and wonder, even if nothing is awesome or wonderful. And that leads us, sorry,
I'm thinking about the mourner's cottage, which, you know, people say, oh, it's a prayer for the dead, which isn't exactly the case, because it praises God. It's the case of mourning, you know, it's not, it's looking forward. So, yeah, right there.
so she writes about God and her experience, and think about it, right? So here you are, you're a rabbi, God is sort of part of the business, and then your child is diagnosed with this very rare, usually fatal degenerative illness, and now you wonder, right? Where is God in the midst of all of this? So she writes, I started to believe that God was listening and that God was answering us too. Now I could see that God's answer to my prayers is quite different from the answer I'd been searching for. No, I wasn't going to get the job they'd been praying for or prevent a natural disaster, right? If I say, oh God, please let me get this job. Or, oh God, please let the fires not go to Brentwood. Those prayers are not likely to be answered in the way that we would wish, right? Because there's a difference between wishing and praying, right? So she realized that part of the way she had to hold on to hope was if she says, oh God, fix my daughter's illness, that God wasn't available to her. But the God that was available to her could give her the things she needed. And what was it that she needed as a mother to this little girl? She needed strength. What else did she need? Hope, resolve, resilience, insight, wisdom, patience, humor, right? Courage. Those are things she realized God could give. God's reply came as the strength to fight on, the courage to face what I was fearing. God's answer was the ability to accept what I had been denying. God's answer appeared to me as hope in the face of despair. When I stopped waiting for miracles and started opening up my soul to God, my prayers suddenly started working. I could pray for strength. I was now coming to see prayer not as a negotiation, but as an experience. It was a sense of being connected, of being part of something larger than myself. I think a lot of times we look at prayer as a business transaction, right? Oh God, if you give me the thing I'm asking for, then I will become a more righteous person. As opposed to becoming a more righteous person because it would probably be good to be a righteous person, right? We dangle that as if that's for God, not for us, right? I'll live a more holy existence if you give me what I'm looking for. And sometimes that's all the praying we can do. Because we're lying on the floor of the jungle in the middle of the night and we've been overrun by the enemy, and all we're praying for is that they don't step on us and that we live through the night. And sometimes all we can do is lay there face down in the mud and pray, oh God, if you get me through this, I'll do something for you. Because we are so powerless, right? But generally speaking, prayer is not a negotiation. I want you to imagine, right? Your soul is your cell phone. And you know when you get to a certain part of the day and you look at your phone and it says 5%. And what do you have to do when the phone's at 5%? You got to plug it in. So what if prayer was taking the cord from your soul and plugging it into the source of all the energy in the universe?
It's action, you have to take action yourself.
Right? It was about connection. It was an attempt to be in the presence of God, read plugged in. I no longer saw God as a force that shielded me or anyone else from harm. God wasn't a force field, right? But as a presence who had the power to point us toward the holiness that resides in simple acts. Once I stopped blaming God for everything that went wrong, I could stop hating God and start listening to God, and I was listening. Now, she also acknowledges, part of me was still hoping that God would make my decisions for me and tell me what to do. And we live in a broken world, and inside us, there beats a heart that has been broken more times than we'd care to remember. But there will always be someone to help us pick up the shattered pieces and begin the process of repair. Sometimes with glue, sometimes with love, sometimes with miracles, always with God. In the book of Exodus, we read, and Moses approached the fog where God was. I thought to myself, a life with God doesn't mean a life of clarity. Life is uncertain. Life is unfair. Life is chaotic, and God is in the fog. We don't have to search for holiness anywhere else but in the imperfect, hectic world we live in. We all get blindsided by life. We all get struck. We all imagine that the right life or the right answer is somewhere off in the distance, but the real life we've been searching for, where's my little remote? Is hidden behind the warning sign that we get every single time we put on this godforsaken television.
What is that? Make you run.
Whoa!
Press more.
But the real life we've been searching for is here in the fog. And it's interesting, when you talk about those times in life when you were the most hopeful, when things were going along so smoothly, what did the future look like? Undetermined. You're standing under the chuppah with your beloved, right? You don't know what's going to happen. There's no clarity other than what's going to be served for the meal, right? That's about it. Carol Oxer was one of my teachers at the Hebrew Union College, who writes on spirituality, said that a covenant is an agreement that you forge, not knowing what it will mean for you, but knowing that it will transform your life. She writes a little bit about waiting for life to begin, and how sometimes we are waiting for God to sit in the driver's seat, and we like to sit in the passenger seat and assume that the Holy One will drive. But one of the most painful aspects of waiting for life to begin, she writes, is the belief that one's life as it is today has no meaning, isn't interesting enough or powerful enough to be a real life. No one wants to live a pointless existence. The reality is every life, just as it is right now, has its own unique power and lesson to teach. No life is a chaotic mess devoid of meaning or structure or a message. Every day has its story. Every dream holds a lesson. A lot of times it's how you choose to look at it. There's a famous parable that I love, of which I've shared in different contexts, so if it's a repeat, I apologize, but for most of us, we're losing our memories and probably don't. There are 3 stonecutters who are spending their lives and their days taking boulders and cutting them into blocks 1 foot by 1 foot by 9 inches. The blocks are being used to build a cathedral. They go to the first person, you remember it?
Not completely.
Good. They go to the first person, they say, what are you doing? he kind of scowls at them and he says, well, what the hell does it look like I'm doing? I'm taking these boulders and I'm cutting them into blocks, 1 foot by 1 foot by 9 inches. It's exhausting. I've been doing it since I was old enough to work. I'm gonna do it until the day before I die. They go to the next guy and they say, what are you doing? He looks up and he smiles and he says, I'm making a living. And by taking these boulders and cutting them into blocks, 1 foot by 1 foot by 9 inches, they pay me enough money to put a roof over my head and food on my table and clothes on my back. They go to the third guy. They say, what are you doing? His face is radiant. He says, I'm building a house for God. By taking these boulders and cutting them into blocks, 1 foot by 1 foot by 9 inches, they're gonna build a place where people are gonna come to experience the divine. It's gonna stand for 1,000 years. You could take a look at somebody whose life is condemned to being a stonecutter and you could say, Gewalt. You can look at any way of looking at life. And you can choose to look at it through a lens of despair. You can choose to look at it through a lens of realism or a lens of hope. And it is that lens that often determines the spiritual quality of what is our existence. There are millions of people who share our struggles. Who isn't longing for something? Who hasn't suffered? Right? The moment when we can see how our own story is both a unique and a shared experience, that is when we can see how we are no longer alone. That is the moment when we can see our life as a meaningful story that is shared by all people. Do you agree with her? Does the idea that you're not alone in your suffering make that suffering more manageable?
Absolutely.
Yes.
How does that work?
By unburdening yourself, by unburdening.
By unburdening yourself. Yeah.
Terrible thing when you think that you're alone. And you're suffering.
Yes.
I remember the first birth I was having, and I said, millions of women have these babies. I'm just one of them. Yeah.
And that gave you some sense of that you could get through that.
Yeah, I mean,
In the book, why bad things happen to good people.
The book is not why bad things happen to good people. When good
When.
bad things happen to
Exactly.
good people. But go ahead.
That also teach you how to, move forward.
What are the 6 most important words a Jewish person ever says? Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. The human condition is about recognizing your singularity in the world and the desire to be unified with everything in the world. Right? What do we do in our adolescence? Don't tell me what to do. We individuate. Those who don't individuate and who are still blaming their mothers when they're in their 30s have trouble, right? Right, what do we do in our adolescence? Through our childhood, we individuate. We recognize our own individuality, my own needs, wants, desires, passions, right? And after, right, our adolescence, what do we spend the rest of our life trying to do? Bond with other people. To resolve our individuality by recognizing the unity of creation. The recognition that God's presence is found in everything that exists. That everything that exists is unified as one. And when we experience that profound loneliness, we fall apart. Because that is the antithesis of what it is our spirit is designed to do. Our spirit is designed to resolve our individuality and to recognize the holiness of community. This is why the family in our tradition is raised up above everything. It's why Jews are compelled to gather 10 people together to pray, even if you don't know them. It's why when a baby is born, or a child comes of age, or when you celebrate a marriage, or when you are ill, or when you have a loss, you are not allowed to do that alone. The greatest sin a young Jewish person can commit is what? Oh, well, that, yes. But I was thinking of something less. Elope. Jews don't elope, right? It was interesting, when we were in Nepal, I was talking to one of our host families, and he was telling me about his wedding, and I said, so tell me about your wedding. He says, oh, well, we didn't have so much, and my wife's family wasn't so much. It was a rough time. We only had 1,000 people. It was a small one. But you know how, like in America, people say, oh, it was such a beautiful wedding. It was so small and intimate. We went away to an island. It was just 15 of us. It was just my. People in Nepal would look at that and be like, well, something wrong with you? You don't have people that love you? Yeah, because they have to invite their family. They have to invite all their neighbors, because these families have lived among the same neighbors for generations. You have to invite all your business colleagues. You have to invite all your partner's business colleagues. You got to invite everybody, right?
Who's the caterer?
Well, actually, my host family's daughter is a wedding planner. So like we were talking about this. We're going to conclude, because we've reached the hour. But I want to just share one last thought from her. Hope will find you. That's a bold promise. It's not something I believe. I thought it was our job to find hope, or to hold on to hope, because if you lose hope, how will you ever get it back? It's even okay to lose hope sometimes, not the end of the world, because hope won't lose you. Hope's got your number and your address. It's personal. Hope, I've learned, is about stepping inside life instead of waiting on the sidelines. It's about welcoming what's there. Because when you open yourself to it, hope is everywhere. Hope will find you. Yes, a pretty bold promise. I'm no longer one of the skeptics. I once started believing it. Once I started believing it, I started seeing it. Hope comes in the form of helping hands. It comes when someone offers the words you need to hear just at the moment you need to hear them most. Hope arrives in all sorts of disguises. When hope comes, offer it a chair. And here she is with her daughter Noah, getting ready for her wedding this year. And Noah won't be here, but Naomi will be here in a couple weeks. And so I hope you'll avail yourself of the opportunity to meet with her and learn with her and study with her and pray with her. And
Thank you.
on behalf of Hope,
Thank you.
have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rich book.
Wow. Welcome. Wow. I know.
Thank you. Thank you. See you this weekend.
How are you?